I'm an artist, and I would never compromise my artistic integrity in service of some crass business needs. They said, too bad, the job comes with a promotion and a big corner office. I said, let me put Kenny Moore on the phone. So I took the job, times being what they were. My wife told me not to take it. She's an accountant, MBA in finance. She says, you don't understand how business works, Kenny. They're going to use this against you. As soon as there's a mistake, they're going to fire you. You'll be the scapegoat. So I kept saying no. I kept saying, I don't want the job. I said, put me in charge of compensation. I can lie, figures, give these guys big bonuses. That's a better career move. No, the chairman actually wants this. I kept saying, the president actually called me in one day. He said, sit down, close the door. He says, I don't know what it was like in the monastery, but here in corporate America, we pay you salary. You take the friggin' job. I've never had to fire anybody for refusing a promotion. Get the hell out of my office now. I said, I think you just violated our corporate values. You're not supposed to curse like that. That is how I got the job. And I'm as surprised as you are. The president's secretary says they will never fire you, Kenny. They fear divine retribution. You almost died. You used to be a priest. You keep coming back. They're scared. So what they do is they created this position around me, around the corporate common good. A confidential resource reports directly to the CEO so they don't kill me. It's around the corporate common good. It's a trust figure. It's about identifying obstacles that get in the way, policies, practices, procedures that prevent people from bringing their passion to the workplace. So I have these unique relationships with people that I don't understand. Yes?
Why do you think your president of the company was ready for a shift in the culture where he was ready to now talk to the employees and say the sign?
Here's my read. I work in an energy industry, that's similar to trucking and phones and all that stuff. It was going through deregulation. So here was a guy leading a 100-year-old company that he needed to change. And he was a monk who was trying to change a 2,000-year-old company. And he thought there would be some similarities. I personally believe that if the company had not been going through dramatic change, they wouldn't have tolerated me for a day. But I think they were looking for something different. Other interesting things that, and when they came to promote me, I said, you want to promote me? Why? Employees trust you. You don't reposition your opinion when senior management's in the room. And we send our executives away to all these conferences to hear people like Peter Senge and Tom Peters and Jim Collins. And they come back saying two things. First, what the hell are these guys talking about? Building community and inviting people. And the other thing they say to us is, all these guys sound like Kenny Moore. So we figured maybe you could help us, since you're an internal person, make these changes into deregulation and radically change the company, working as an insider rather than outsider. So I think that was the reason why. It's my read, at least. Yes, you are.
And I'm really intrigued by this idea of mysteries and greater questions. Can you sort of bring us into that mindset, either through a story or some experience where working with an executive to pop a question out to the higher level and start to deal with the real opportunities?
No. Next question.
I just lost respect for him.
So, first of all, right, practice celibacy for 15 years, come back and talk with me. Little joke. Interesting. This is an interesting experience for me. This conversation, I find a lot of resistance from people who are lower in the organization, first-line supervisors. Executives seem to understand this. They said, yes, this is what I'm dealing with, which I'm not good at. I hate predicaments. Could you give me the answer to how do I fix that? See, it doesn't lend itself to that. Most of our leaders are accountants, engineers, lawyers. Those are not the core competencies for dealing with this stuff. If you're a poet, a theologian, an artist, you have good qualities to deal with this stuff. Now, there's an increasing amount of literature out there that's talking about bringing into your organization people who have these right brain skills. Some of you may be familiar with Daniel Pink, A Whole New Mind. I mean, Daniel's talking about listen, if you're good at accounting, if you're a good engineer, if you're a good finance person, guess what? We can ship that overseas tomorrow and get 1,000 people at 10% of your salary to do it. But if you can have some language mythology to help us understand this stuff, if you can somehow give us and provide us some language, some mythology about engaging the passion of people, about moving from compliance to commitment. That's a conversation I had at lunchtime. We can pay people for compliance. We can beat it out of them. We can performance appraisal it out of them. We can incentivize them, if that's an actual word. But what you get is compliance. If you are a business leader whose employees are compliant, you are dead in the marketplace. What you need is committed people. Oh, commitment. We can't pay people for commitment. Actually, you try to pay people for commitment, they'll be pissed off. Commitment can only be invited, not mandated. And we know something about this skill set called invitation, which is an emerging executive competency. Invitation, as St. Thomas Aquinas reminds us, invitation gets its power from the possibility of refusal. What that means in New York City is my yes means nothing if I can't say no. So to the degree we can create a safe space for employees to disagree and say no, to that degree we have expanded a corporate culture that involves commitment. It's somewhat counterintuitive because we're kind of afraid if we let people say no, if we allow people to talk about this negative side and don't tell them why and connect it to business best practice, it's not good. Well, that doesn't work anymore. And how do we deal with the shadow sides of organizations? Because every organization has it. And that's what's preventing us. And that conversation is palpable to our executives, but they don't have, they're not artists, they're not theologians, they're not psychologists. They're freaking doers. They want to close at the end of the day. They got to deliver. And they are hungering for people who have some semblance of taking this thing called mystery, which, by the way, whenever you talk about people, you're talking about mystery. It doesn't lend itself to a mathematical formula. How do you invite people? And I like that word, passion. Passion comes from the Latin, which I have a degree in, which means to suffer. You who come from the Christian tradition, during Holy Week, we read the passion of our Lord Jesus Christ, his death and resurrection. Passion means to suffer, patio. What you have passion for, you will suffer for. Of course, you know that. But the good news is that you're going to pay a price anyway. So you pay a price by climbing the corporate ladder, putting in these obscene hours, saying yes when you mean no, making believe you're happy, that you actually agree, pay a price. So you're going to suffer either way. I say, why don't you suffer for something you actually have some leverage in and care about? Now, what's interesting is here in the 21st century, this stuff that used to be perceived as psychobabble and theological, spiritual stuff has now become mainstream, cutting-edge, competitive advantage stuff in the workplace. I just think that's interesting. I think it's funny that a monk shows up in the workplace and instead of kicking me out, they promote me to the CEO. I do a book and becomes a business bestseller. Go figure. I just think there's something going on out there. Front page of the Wall Street Journal today. This is a hoot. I mean, and Murdoch hasn't even taken over yet. Front page, a different take on healthcare, a trip to Lourdes. For those of you who don't come from the Catholic tradition, Lourdes is a healing place in France. Here's a healthcare provider actually paying for one of their terminally ill, blind individuals to go get healed